Right, well, it's 11:05. I'm running a little late because I've been working on another aspect of ministry. It's Thursday, the 23rd of April, 2026, and my mind is full of what I've been writing on, and what I've been writing on is the law and how we relate to the law rather than I'll save what I've been writing on for another time and consider generally where we're at as Christians. Many people rely on the law to save them. They totally ignore the sacrifice of Christ. They consider the law as the way to avoid sin and therefore be holy. Yes, we need to avoid sin. We need to get beyond sin. But all they're doing is saying, well, I'm going to abide by the law, and that deals with sin, and therefore I am just and righteous, and I need to be accepted into heaven by God. And I think that's a total fail. After all, by doing that, you're denying the sacrifice Jesus made for sin. By demanding adherence to the law, you're making Christ inferior to it. So you are no more than a Jew. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with Jewish people. Jewish people are fine. But Christ is not a part of their religion. And anyone that raises the law above the sacrifice of Christ, also, like the Jews, Christ is not part of their religion. I will endeavour to look at it another way. If sin is a barrier between you and God, and the law is a device to show you that sin, and sacrifice in the law is a way to remove that sin. Then, by stating the importance of the law, the knowledge of the sin, and the removal of the sin by the law, committing animal sacrifice, as under the law, that's the only way to do it. Christ is not accepted as sacrifice under the law. Okay, so if you're abiding by the law, you're refusing Christ's sacrifice. So you must sacrifice animals for your sin. Yet I see people out there that are focusing on the law and saying the law is important, and seeing that sin through the eyes of the law is important, and you need to have the law to get to God. Well, you're still stuck. You still haven't removed that barrier. Go sacrifice an animal because it's sacrifice that's needed to remove that sin. And that's what the law is all about. The law shows you what the sin is and tells you specifically about animal sacrifice to remove it. Well, if Christ was the sacrifice for sin, removing that sin, then we don't need to focus on the law. The path is already there. But if we hold on to sin, it's like trying to get past that wall, and the wall's up, you can get past it, but you're holding on to the wall. You can't get past a wall that you're holding on to. You can't get past sin that you're holding on to. That's why the law had regular sacrifice, because you'd sacrifice for your sin, and then next week you'd go off and sin again, so you'd have to go sacrifice again. Much like confession in the Catholic Church, for example. What is the use of focusing on the law? What we need to not focus on, but realize is that it is a sign showing us what sin is, saying there's a wall here that needs to be removed. Go sacrifice an animal to remove it. That's the law. Anyone focusing on the law must also commit animal sacrifices. They're Jews. That's what a Jew is supposed to do. And even a Jew isn't a Jew in the modern day because Jews don't sacrifice anymore. Their sins are unforgiven. There's nothing to forgive their sin without that sacrifice. Interesting, isn't it? So, if we know that that sin is forgiven and we choose to hold on to it, Paul wrote something about if you sin after accepting the sacrifice for sin, Christ's sacrifice on the cross, then there is no sacrifice left for sin. Because what is there to now sacrifice for the new sin? Not that we are instantly unable to sin the moment we make a commitment to God, but we will be if we've made a commitment to God, understanding all the nuances of that commitment. We will be anti-sin minded. We will be full of intent to walk away from sin. A person that is an alcoholic might not be able to give up instantly. It might take them a few weeks. But if they drink less every day, they drink half what they drank the day before, and after a couple of weeks they just stop entirely, great. They've been walking towards godliness. They've been letting go of that sin that's been holding them back. So sin might not disappear entirely immediately, but the longer that you're a Christian, if you're not walking away from it more and more, without having to, oh, let's go read the law to know exactly what sin is, and let's talk to people about the law and focus on the law because it's the law that matters above the God that created it. It's a law that matters beyond Christ because the sacrifice of Christ meant nothing. Because it's the law that matters, which only one of those can matter. Only the sacrifice of Christ that removed the sin, because that's what a sacrifice does, or you focus on the law and you have no sacrifice for sin left, unless you go back to sacrificing animals, which I don't see people that are always talking about the law doing. Are they abiding by their treasured law? No, they're not committing those sacrifices. Are they accepting the sacrifice of Christ? No, because they're still focusing on the law. Now, again, the law and sin are different. The law shows what sin is, and sacrifice removes the sin. We know that sin is putting yourself before God and before other people, being selfish, me, prideful, ego, and all the other things that relate to the me, arrogant, boastful, or whatever. The self-importance, the desire to have that object which isn't yours to make that makes a person steal it. Theft is a desire of me, what I want. I take what I want in the mind of the thief. People murder because they were hurt or they don't like someone. It's the self. All these sins and crimes come from self. Is helping others a crime? In some worlds, it is. In Nazi Germany, it was a crime to help Jews. But was that crime a godly thing? Or was that crime an evil crime itself? Not crime, was it an evil law? You see, the law of man certainly can't be perfect. Law of the Bible wasn't perfect either. It needed something more. It did not create a relationship between the sinner and God. Relationship was restored through Christ. So, where are you at? Do you focus on the law? Do you focus on the law yet hold on to that sin? So so this arm is stopping those legs from getting past the wall? Are you stuck in sin? That's the question. Forget the legalistic side of it, because again, I don't have to worry about the law says A, B, C, D. If I first go, I will be selfless. Well, if I'm selfless, I'm not only going to not do A, B, C, D, but I'm not going to do E, F, G, H, I, J. All those sins will not be in my mind if I am thinking on God and godly things and how to help people. Because if I'm thinking those things, good things, there's no space left in my mind to also think of lusts or think of um, drugs and alcohol or whatever else. Where are you at? No one's perfect, sure. But is no one's perfect an excuse for many people to live the lifestyle they want to live rather than what they're called to live? I come across people often that want to focus on the law and they are rather legalistic about it. Oh, the law says this, so you're wrong. The law says there's only one Sabbath day. Sure. Christ says don't hold it above any other day and therefore worship on the one day only. Worship is a 7 day thing. Blessing people is a 7 day thing, not a 1 day thing. Giving is a 7 day thing, not a 1 day thing. Fellowship is a 7 day thing, not a 1 day thing. Creating messages is not what a pastor does on a Sunday in a church, a 1 day thing, or what a rabbi does on a Saturday, a 1 day thing. God isn't limited to 1 day. So I will talk about godly things every day, not just on Sundays or Saturdays if I was a Seventh Day Adventist or whichever one it is. I think it's them who are so concerned about the law that you need to focus on things like the Sabbath and its importance of being that one day of the week. Irrelevant. Irrelevant when you're preaching every day. Irrelevant when you're eating bread and drinking grape juice, not wine. I'll get into that. Well, not alcoholic wine anyway. I'll get into that in a moment. When you can do that every day, you can think of God when you eat and drink every day. Wine, okay, sure. Jesus turned water into wine. Not a problem. Yeah, I can make wine by grabbing a grape and squeezing it. Technically, that's wine. Because in the Bible, wine was grape juice. There was new wine and old wine. New wine was nearly crushed grape, and old wine was grape that had been crushed and had been left to ferment to become alcoholic. Old wine. Did Jesus turn the water into new wine or old wine? It doesn't say. So it could easily have been new wine, non-alcoholic. Just because Jesus turned water into wine doesn't give people an excuse to be an alcoholic. In fact, there are verses that mention um, wisdom beyond choosing to simply drink alcohol or not drink alcohol, as in the motives behind it. Um, Paul said to someone else, like Timothy, for example, in a letter to take some wine for their stomach. And um, in another part of the Bible, maybe John or something like that, I don't recall somewhere, uh, it speaks of avoiding all things that could look sinful, including alcohol, as that may make someone else stumble. You know, if you're drinking alcohol as a Christian, that means alcoholics might then go, well, I can drink too. And they just go off and get drunk every day. The mouthful of alcohol isn't a sin. Getting drunk is. There's a difference. What is sin and what is not sin? Sin to one might not be sin to another, especially when it comes to having a mouthful of alcohol. It's not a mouthful of alcohol that is a sin. It's the fifth, the sixth, the seventh. There's a difference. So, where are you at? What do you focus on? Do you focus on the law? Is it really more important than Christ? Or do you focus on walking a sinless life, which isn't the law? Because a sinless life is also a life that shows the love of God. No selfishness there. So therefore, what is there is charis and the fruits of the Spirit: love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control. Do those things come through the law? Nope, I can't find them coming through the law, but they come through the Spirit. And they come through walking a sinless life. And when I say sinless, I'm not saying without sin. I'm saying less sin than you had the day before. After a short while, you'll be doing basically nothing sinful. All you'll do is be a giving, kind person. Of course, the self might rear its ugly head just a little bit on very rare occasions. But as we seek God to replace ourselves in our hearts, it becomes minimal, less and less every day. Okay, well, I've been blubbering on for pretty much half an hour, so well, actually, no, I started 5 minutes later than normal. Eh, I think I'm done anyway. Okay, so rate these messages out of 10. Post the good ones onto others, whether by email or invite people to the group. Post them onto Christian forums and the like. Reference them in Reddit messages or whatever it may be. Why? Do I want my face out there? No. Ideally, I want everybody in the group to start creating messages themselves and for my face to be basically unseen. 10 or 20 people creating messages every day. And in that case, even if there was two or three doing it every day, I would basically stop creating messages and focus on more important things. My messages aren't important. I'm merely trying to inspire everyone else to act. And once they do, I don't need to. Okay, so let's wrap up there. Um, Wherever you're at in your Christian walk, we can help you go further. If you're a new Christian, we can help you learn. If you have got to a stage where you're ready to discover your call, we can help. Or train in that call, we can help. Or launch that call, we can help. We seek to move you on in God and build a community of like-minded believers around you to support you through that process as well. To get to a stage where you are then helping others, because that's what it's all about. It's all about us developing ourselves to then take God's message to the world. I'll talk about Mark 1:38 sometime, where the basic version of it is Christ said, let's go into other towns and preach the gospel, for that is why I came. Well, if that is why he came, to preach the gospel, as well as to be a sacrifice for sin, but if he came to preach the gospel, then a Christian is a disciple. Disciplined in the way of Christ, we do what he did. So if we're not expressing the gospel to everyone we meet, that's what it seems he did. Goes to a well, gets a drink of water, starts talking about living water to present godly things to the lady there. If we're not presenting God at every opportunity, then we're not disciplined in Christ's ways. We're not disciples. And certainly, therefore, by implication, not Christians. Remember that. I'm not good at it yet. I've only just been trying it for a couple of days. I intend to come up with a good formula to make it easy for you people to learn and do yourselves. Though I don't have that yet, I'll keep practicing until I do. Okay. Bless you. Govern well in charis.